What a bitter ending to a season that started off so well. Let's talk about the bad and good from Miami's loss in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and what this means for an important offseason coming up.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I came for the Pop-Tarts, but the only thing that got toasted was Miami's defense. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a game where I want to remind you guys, I told you to smash the over for this one. Early last week, the over-under was 55.5. It ended up closing over 60. These teams combined for 83 points. And that should not be surprising to anyone, given how both teams had vulnerabilities. And boy, the word vulnerabilities is putting it nicely on defense. Miami put up 41 points with Cam Ward only playing half of the game. Folks, I'm upset. I'm very upset because no matter who was on the field and when, no matter which quarterback was on the field, I wanted to win that football game. I know that rival fans have been trolling us for you're in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Who cares? I wanted to win that game. And I don't care that Emory Williams was on the field late. And boy, we saw so many of the same, no matter who was on the field, we saw so many of the same problems in that Pop-Tarts Bowl. We're going to talk about all of that because, guys, the 30-minute Emory Williams audition did not go well. And I have been someone who has or had really believed in him. And I will be the first to admit my faith was very much shaken based on what we saw yesterday. So we'll talk about the quarterback questions that Miami is going to have heading into next season. We'll also talk about this ridiculous fake outrage that's being directed at Cam Ward after the game yesterday. But let's talk about why Miami let us down in this 42-41 loss to Iowa State, finishing a season 10-3, 10 wins, but that's after a 9-0 start. You lose 3 out of your final 4 games. Miami's defense, as usual, was nowhere near good enough. And Mario Cristobal admitted after the game, right before the backdrop of the post-game presser nearly, crushed him and fell on him. Mario Cristobal admitted that this defensive unit, has not met the standard for Miami Hurricanes football. So we're going to talk about it, and we'll find out during this very long offseason what changes and what tweaks need to be made. Obviously, part of those tweaks that need to be made, we're not just talking about coaching. We can talk about coaching. We're not just talking about coaching. We're also talking about stacking talent. And I know Miami is already working to do that in the transfer portal, and hopefully they're not done stacking more defensive talent, because in this Pop-Tarts Bowl against Iowa State, and I give Iowa State credit, we saw basically all of the same issues for Miami's defense: poor tackling angles, confusion on misdirection plays, which has been a theme all year, receivers running wide open with several yards of green grass between them and the nearest Miami defender. And yeah, of course, a lot of this is on talent, which needs to improve, but I believe coaching also has to be held accountable when this unit never looks prepared. And yeah, now that Mario Cristobal is officially entering off-season mode as of, probably this morning at midnight, he's got decisions to make about who to retain on this defensive staff and who not to. The Hurricanes ended up giving up 415 yards of offense, and that's, I know Miami put up more offense than they gave up, but 415 yards of offense given up, that's not the standard of Miami football. And this has got to be fixed next year, because this defense, what would Miami's record be if we could have played at times just competent defense? Would Miami be a one-loss team? Would Miami have been undefeated if competent defense could have been played when you had the number 1 offense in the country? And, I do point some fingers, a lot of fingers at the pass rush. I know that the back end is the real mess, but the pass rush was supposed to be bailing out the secondary all year by, giving quarterbacks a second or two, if any, to throw the football. that didn't happen consistently enough outside of a handful of games. I'm not going to say Miami's pass rush never stepped up, but they didn't step up consistently. And against Iowa State in that loss yesterday, Miami produced only 1 sack in that game. 41 points and 524 yards of total offense, which is what Miami put up. That should be enough to win any game. When your offense is putting up 524 yards and scoring 41 points, that should be enough to win any game. Pop-Tart Bowl, Cheez-It Bowl, Cereal Bowl, you win any game with that. Cam Ward, and we'll talk about him, he spotted the team 31 points in just 30 minutes, and they couldn't finish out the game for him. I was hoping the defense would give us more in that game because they had a full month to prepare for one opponent. I was wrong. And I know that personnel, certain players not being available, they made things tougher. They made things a lot tougher because while, the defensive line and the linebacker positions were pretty much at full strength for the Pop-Tart Bowl, a thin defensive backfield was made even thinner than usual. Daryl Porter didn't play, neither did Damari Brown, who's still, he's banged up. He's still been dealing with that stuff he was dealing with all year. O.J. Frederick seemed to pick up an injury in the game. You didn't have, obviously, Robert Stafford, who transferred, or Jadis Richard, who got hurt late in the season. So Miami already had a depleted defensive secondary that was beyond depleted in this game. So, of course, we've got our negative takeaways on the defense. Another negative takeaway from this game, which has been, a theme for, I'm not even going to say all year long, it's been a theme for most of my life, is a lack of team discipline. Is this just a problem that's embedded in Miami's DNA as a program? Like, is this something that it's going to take an exorcism to fix this? Because I know Mario Cristobal works really hard to try to make this team more disciplined and to get them to stop shooting themselves in the foot. He's obviously not been successful at that. Miami commits 6 penalties for 46 yards. That was compared to just 2 penalties for 20 yards by Iowa State. The Cyclones, by the way, are the least penalized team in college football. So that's what discipline looks like. But the other part of it wasn't just penalties. Miami loses the turnover margin 3-0, -3 in the turnover margin. And yeah, honestly, when you go -3 in the turnover margin, you're probably lucky you only lost the game by 1 point. I mean, Miami was still right there despite that stat. You had a bad snap, which is uncharacteristic of Zach Carpenter. I was really surprised by that snap that led to a fumble and a quick score for Iowa State. You had an unfortunate fumble by Mark Fletcher, who just didn't take care of the football after he picked up a first down. That was unfortunate. And then you had the heave by Emory Williams that was picked off at the end. And yes, we will talk more about Emory Williams, believe me. And so, only Miami can make a 10-win season feel like 6-6. And I know that after we've had more time to digest this, and after we zoom out, we're still going to look eventually and say, 10 wins, that was a good season. Hopefully we remember the good times, and we'll talk about these good times and what Cam Ward especially has provided for this program this year. And Damian Martinez, we're going to talk about him. So I know, again, we may look back on this season and say, okay, 10 wins, that was a good year, but it doesn't change the disappointment of starting 9-0, controlling your own destiny, and finishing the season 10-3, which means you lost 3 of your final 4 games. And yes, I wanted to win the Pop-Tarts Bowl because reaching 11 wins, that's something Miami hasn't done in 21 years. And reaching that 11-win mark would have been significant to me, and we fell short. I want to talk about Cam Ward, some of the other opt-ins, some of the opt-outs. We will, of course, talk extensively about Miami's quarterback situation moving forward because, unfortunately, we have more questions than answers after the second half of yesterday's game. But to me, I think Cam Ward is getting a ton of unfair outrage, and I think a lot of that comes from bad actors who are just trying to stir things up and troll, because Cam Ward deserves a lot more credit than he's getting from some of these clowns on social media. And yeah, we will talk about what Emory Williams' performance yesterday means for the future of Miami Hurricanes football. And we're also going to talk about the good, guys, because, certain young players played really well at the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And it makes you think, hey, players X, Y, and Z are going to be a big part of the future of this football team. So you want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not nearly done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we're not nearly done yet with Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me, guys. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my family's future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you guys for letting me in that first part of the show vent a lot about yesterday. The other thing I didn't even mention about the discipline was I didn't see this at first from the press box because I wasn't watching the ESPN or ABC feed being at the game, but I saw that shoving match and a couple of punches thrown between Marquise Lightfoot and Simeon Barrow. I mean, that's, I know sometimes you're like, hey, it's good that these guys care so much and you fight, you make up, you keep it in the family, but it's not a good look. I mean, when you talk about the lack of team discipline to have, two guys shoving and throwing hands on the sideline, I don't know what the reasons why they were arguing. I mean, the defense wasn't playing well, so that makes tempers flare a little bit, but that's not a good look. And again, when you try to improve the team discipline, if you're going to be shoving and throwing punches, like keep that on the practice field, in the locker room, when that's front and center on national TV, it's not a good look. So that was, I thought, another poor thing about the team discipline. But let's talk about Cam Ward, Miami's starting quarterback, who went out there, went 12 for 19, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But Ward only played in the first half. And I have seen my social media feed turning into hot take theater, seeing a lot of football fans and some even media personalities who have accused Cam Ward of quitting on his team at halftime. As if Ward just suddenly, unbeknownst to Mario Cristobal or anybody, Ward just decided at halftime, coach, I'm out. I'm not playing the rest of the game. And all these people are bitching and moaning about Cam Ward. So Ward playing in just the first half, that was prearranged. That was premeditated. He did not quit on his team at halftime. That's not how that happened. And I had a feeling heading into the game, I was not privy to Ward or Miami's plans on how they were going to handle this, but I did have a feeling pregame that something like that could happen. But I didn't know how long he was expected to play for. Was he only going to play for 1 quarter, 2 series? Was he going to play just until he set the NCAA touchdown record? Was he going to play a half? Was he going to play the whole game? I figured something like that could happen, but I didn't know exactly what. Now, in this day and age, when most players in Cam Ward's situation, he's about to be a first-round draft pick, possibly a first overall draft pick, usually players in Ward's situation will commonly opt out of a bowl game altogether and not play, period. So with that said, I find it really unfair that people are going to try to rip Cam Ward for playing but not playing enough. Would you have liked it better if he skipped the game entirely? What would your take have been then? If he skipped the game entirely, well, this guy didn't care enough about his teammates to finish the job that he started. So this was, I guess, unless Ward played the entire game, this was a hard one for him to win. And let me say this, and I can only speak for me. So you guys let me know in the comments how you feel about this. I am thankful that we got to see Cam Ward suit up at Miami one final time. And yeah, in that first half, he created more of those electric plays that we saw from him all season. The New York Giants general manager was at the game. I'm sure he liked what he saw. So Ward, I mentioned 12 for 19, 190 passing yards. That's in one half, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He threw his touchdowns to Elijah Arroyo, JoJo Trader, who we'll talk more about in a moment, and Jacoby George. George, I think, also sat out the second half. And, Cam Ward, we're of course, we felt the impact this year of seeing an electric quarterback with us for one season at Miami. But Ward has also made a lasting impact on college football as a whole with his time at Incarnate Word, Washington State, and then finishing out his college career at Miami, because Cam Ward has become the new all-time NCAA leader in Division I touchdowns with 508 in his career. It's insane. We've had some great ones here at the U. We've had 2 Heisman winners at quarterback, other greats, but in my opinion, Cam Ward, I know he unfortunately does not have national championship or the hardware that some of the other Miami quarterbacks have earned over the years. I wish the rest of the team had done better for Cam. But in my opinion, Cam Ward is the best quarterback to ever play at Miami. And I think that's going to be proven in a few months when he's likely to be the number 1 overall pick. So anyone who accuses Cam Ward of quitting has no idea how much work this guy puts in off the field and the impact he's made in just 11 and a half months at Miami, what he means to his teammates, what he means to his coaches, and what he means to the Hurricanes community. Now, with all that said, I'm sure I wasn't the only one who, when, Miami was down a point with one final drive, I'm like, please, can we suit up Ward for one more drive, please? Because we could have maybe had a chance to take the lead and win the football game. So others who decided to play in the game that didn't have to, I'm very thankful to Elijah Arroyo. What a season for the tight end. Caught 4 passes in the game for 64 yards, including a touchdown. So Elijah Arroyo, not only is he about to be a high draft pick, but I'm especially thankful that he decided to play, and I appreciate, his sacrifice and the risk that he took because of all the injuries he's suffered throughout his career. Because let's not forget, Elijah Arroyo lost the previous 2 seasons of his college career due to injuries, and he was fully healthy this year and played like a man on a mission this season. And he did not have to suit up in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and I'm thankful he did, and he had a really good game. Damian Martinez, my goodness. Martinez, he's likely going pro. I know he's got another year of eligibility, probably will not choose to use it. I will continue begging for Martinez to come back for one last ride. Damian Martinez was throwing defenders aside like rag dolls. 14 carries, 179 yards, and a touchdown. And Martinez, in that game, eclipsed 1,000 yards for the season. And that was with a decreased workload compared to what he had at Oregon State for the last couple of years. So this was a really impactful season for Martinez, who was more of a running back by committee, even though he was the featured guy for most of the season, was part of a committee, where at Oregon State, he was their offense. Like, that dude was their entire offense there. And so he was unbelievable. And, had Miami won the game, Damian Martinez would have been that Pop-Tart Bowl MVP. Instead, it went to Rocco Becht, who got to put a live Pop-Tart mascot in a giant toaster, and it was not our guy, Damian Martinez, but he was tremendous. And again, Martinez is likely to go pro. I'd love it if he came back for another year. And even if Martinez doesn't come back, Miami's going to be in really good shape at running back. Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle would be the top 1-2 punch. And Gerard Pringle, I think, is going to be really good. He's coming into Miami as a true freshman, and Chris Wheatley-Humphrey can have an opportunity to play more next season. Another player who, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that a kicker opted in, but I'm thankful that Andy Borregales played. And Borregales, he went 2 for 2 on his field goals yesterday, 5 for 5 on extra points. Borregales became Miami's all-time leading scorer with 405 career points. And the unfortunate news here is the Borregales parents, they're apparently out of sons. Like, it's not too late, Mr. and Mrs. Borregales, if you can adopt a 17-year-old and put him through the same circuit training that Jose and Andy went through, adopt a 17-year-old, athletic build, maybe a soccer background, and get him ready to kick at Miami in a couple of years. Please do that. We're going to miss Andy. We're going to miss the entire Borregales family. In terms of players who opted out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, you will never hear me ever utter any negative words about Xavier Restrepo. He is one of the best all-time Miami Hurricanes. And while I'm thankful to those who did opt in when they didn't have to, I do not blame Xavier Restrepo for deciding against playing in this game. He's begun working out for his NFL draft journey, and I hope Restrepo gets taken early. I've seen him projected anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th round. He made the decision that was best for him and for his family not to play in this bowl game, to get ready for his NFL experience. And I've got nothing but thank yous for Xavier Restrepo, because this man, I mean, you talk about all-time leaders from Miami, all-time leading career receiver in receptions, in yardage. Xavier Restrepo exemplary, and the fact that he stayed at Miami for all 4 seasons when, he may have been tempted to transfer somewhere last year. He decided he wanted to finish out his career with Miami, and I'm so thankful that he did that. So you will never hear me utter a negative word about Xavier Restrepo. God bless X, and God bless his family, because they have all worked so hard. It takes a village, and I know he gives all his thanks and glory to the Lord. So he will be too humble to take credit for this, but how hard Xavier Restrepo has worked to get to this point. I do not fault him or blame him for opting out of the game. All right, when we come back, we have to discuss some hard questions. I also do want to talk about other young players who flashed in the game, but we might have a little bit of a problem at the quarterback position. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin, who's been covering all of these bowl games and college football playoff and transfer portal, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Spencer does an awesome job. Much like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available free on YouTube. So, all right, let's talk about Emory Williams. People are already very loud in my social media mentions, like, Dono, why were you lying to us about this kid? You've been propping him up, you've been promoting him. He came into the game and he looked awful. Okay, folks, let me be the first to tell. I'm not one of those hard-headed media dudes who's just gonna dig myself into a trench and insist on keeping my narrative the same. I reserve the right to evolve my opinions based on new information. So let me be the first to admit, while the situation was not ideal to, come into a game, you didn't start. Emory Williams did not look good yesterday. I cannot sugarcoat that. Like, if that's part of his audition for being the starting quarterback at the University of Miami next year, and I don't think that should be the entirety of his audition, because he puts in hours of time on the practice field. Like, his entire audition for next year should not be defined in 2 quarters of action. But those 2 quarters of action were concerning. All the passes batted down at the line of scrimmage, had a couple of decisions that were not great, including failing to see and read a check down to Mark Fletcher that would have gotten him somewhere. The arm strength was not what I thought it was based on what I've seen in practice. It kind of makes you wonder if just maybe mentally he wasn't up to it yesterday, because I've seen him practice a lot better. But then also in practice, you go up against Miami's defense. Maybe that has something to do with it, because that was not a good audition for Emory Williams. 5 for 14 for 26 yards, 0 touchdowns, had the interception at the end. And on that final drive, and I know Miami's time was limited, but Hurricanes couldn't get past midfield on that final drive. Like, the offense was not moving, unfortunately, with Emory Williams at the helm. The play calling was also herky-jerky, because I really felt like in that second half, Miami probably should have run with their running game in totality, because Iowa State couldn't stop it. But then you also felt they were making efforts to let him throw to try to show us something for next year. So the play calling when he was on the field was herky-jerky, did not do him any favors, but his execution was not good. And for, a 6'5" quarterback to have so many passes batted down at the line of scrimmage, I mean, if I'm looking for a silver lining here, perhaps the silver lining of, Ward not playing in the second half and, getting a look at a guy who, would have been the odds-on favorite to be the starting quarterback next year. Perhaps the good that came out of that 30-minute audition was this may show the coaching staff that we might need to be a little bit more vigilant to figure out a different plan. Now, is it too late to figure that out? Because you've had You've had quarterbacks come and go through the transfer portal already. I don't know of anybody of significance at that position who's in the transfer portal right now. Now, exceptions to that rule could be, because remember, any quarterback who's currently in the playoffs right now, and we have heard some buzz about someone like Quinn Ewers at Texas possibly hitting the transfer portal if he doesn't decide to go pro, because if he does decide to play another year of college, Texas wants to start the Arch Manning era. So there is a possibility, I don't know if it's a likelihood, but a possibility that Quinn Ewers of Texas could hit the portal. I've heard some folks wonder about Sam Leavitt, the quarterback at Arizona State, who's had a lot of success this year, if he might decide to hit the portal, because anyone who's currently in the playoff, they get their own separate window to enter the portal once their team is eliminated. There also is another transfer portal window that's going to open up during the spring. And then the other part of it is it possible Miami does have an internal answer at quarterback, even if Emory Williams does not necessarily become the guy who grabs that? Because, Judd Anderson, who's 6'7", is in that quarterback room. He's got a lot of physical ability and tools. But the guy who I think is most intriguing, and I would say he is going to have an opportunity, assuming Miami doesn't go out and grab like a frontline starting quarterback who becomes available in the portal. I would tell you, I think Luke Nickel is going to have a very fair shot to win that starting job as a true freshman. True freshman Luke Nickel, who's going to be arriving early in January, so he's going to be around for spring football, has been an absolute stud, was named Mr. Georgia football within the past couple of weeks after winning his second straight state title at Milton High School, which is in the largest classification of Georgia high schools, threw for over 400 yards and I think 4 touchdown passes in the state championship game. He's also got good mobility. Like Nickel seems to be the guy that's going to be your future at some point. The question is, could he be ready to be your future immediately? I don't know. We've obviously over the years, various programs have had mixed success giving true freshmen opportunities to start at quarterback. There would likely be growing pains, but honestly, and you guys tell me if you feel differently, but and admittedly, folks, like I know some of you are going to call me a flip-flopper or a hypocrite, whatever. Like I don't care. I reserve the right to evolve my opinions based on new information. And I was discouraged. My faith was shaken in what we saw from Emory Williams. Still an incredible young man, and I've seen him perform better at other times. And I wonder if he can dig himself out of the hole that he dug himself for yesterday. But I can't objectively come away from that second half saying anything other than he did not look good enough. That's my big takeaway. And if you're, I know you're not going to have a new Cam Ward. Like, no matter, Cam Ward is one of one. You're not directly replacing that dude. So no matter who your quarterback is next year, he's not going to be Cam Ward, and you're likely going to be a more run-heavy type of offense. And I'm good with that. If you've got the horses up front, which Miami does, and you've got a good stable of running backs, I'm good with being a run-heavy offense. But your quarterback has to be able to make big throws, clutch throws, and down the field throws, because you do have talent at wide receiver you want to utilize. And my faith was very much shaken in what I saw from Emory Williams. So you guys let me know in the comments what you would like Miami to do with the quarterback position. Do you still want Emory to get his opportunity? Do you think Luke Nickel or Judd Anderson could be the answer? Do you want Miami to be vigilant again in the transfer portal? And again, you don't have any blue chippers who are available right now. You're going to have to hope that certain situations play in your favor out there. What would you guys like me to do, or like Miami to do? Let us know in the comments. Now, I know, forgive me if a lot of this show has been a venting session, okay? Because again, I wanted to win that Pop-Tart Bowl, and I wanted my potential quarterback of the future to go out there and look great, and he didn't. So I'm down. I'm down after a 9-0 start and a 10-3 finish, where Miami went from controlling their own destiny to losing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm down, but I'm not completely down and out, because I'll talk about a couple of guys that I think are going to be important pieces for the future of this program who I really loved watching yesterday. Josiah Trader, JoJo Trader. This dude's going to be a problem for opposing defenses. You saw that 40-yard touchdown that he caught where he little brothered a senior defensive back. I mean, that was an unbelievable play by Trader. And I like the swag that he showed in the celebration as well. We're on to something with Josiah Trader. Like we wanted to see the young receivers get opportunities to play, and that was the guy that I thought made the most of his opportunity. Also made a couple of contested catches in the game. So I love what Miami has in JoJo Trader. Yeah, I know we saw a mixed bag with Ray Joseph yesterday, but I liked that punt return that he had that really helped flip the field, because we haven't seen enough special teams like that for Miami. So I did appreciate that. And man, I appreciate Elijah Lofton. I mean, that kid had a catch for 28 yards. He had he converted the fake punt play, which he ran hard. And again, I kind of wish we'd used Lofton a little bit more at times as a runner to keep defenses off balance. Maybe we use him a little bit more creatively next year. So yeah, I mean, a couple of my big takeaways when you talk about young playmakers, guys like Elijah Lofton and JoJo Trader really got my attention. Oh man. Oh, I appreciate you guys for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you smash that like button, and yeah, we're gonna have a ton of shows throughout the week coming up as we shift our focus back to the transfer portal. We shift our focus on to possible coaching tweaks and changes, because we've officially entered off-season mode now. I've told you guys, don't be too surprised that we haven't seen coaching changes made at this point. I think now is the time when Cristobal is really going to start evaluating the entire coaching staff, and if he sees any opportunities to upgrade, he will. And as SP points out, Justin Scott played well also. That's another important building block for the future. And Ahmad Moten made some plays. He and Justin Scott are going to be playing starring roles on that defensive line next year. I appreciate you guys taking the time to make Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you smash that like button, because we are live right now. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.